Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in and joining us here on Dark Horse Comics for our live Twitch stream with special guests on the Critical Role Comics team. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us today. We have Ariana Maher, who is the letterer.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to at least be on a virtual panel with you again this year since we haven't gotten to do an in-person one yet.
Yeah, Rose City feels
Jody.
like it was so long ago.
I know. Like I said, at least we get to do this, and we're all kind of at home in our own little workspaces, but it's better than nothing. So thank you, all of you, for joining us. And Jody Houser, of course, is the writer of our Critical Role comics.
Hello.
Long time no see, Jody.
Yes, we might have played an RPG on Zoom last night. So
As you do. Earlier today, too, which we will touch on in a moment. I Yes. And I want to shout out also the assistant editor on all of these comics is Jenny Blank. She is helping us by moderating today. So, hi, and thank you, Jenny, behind the scenes. And always Gary, our awesome producer behind the scenes, helping us out and showing off the comics while we're chatting today. And Carrie Yadro at Dark Horse also deserves a big shout out. She is the kind of overall producer in licensing for the Critical Role comics and is an essential part of our team as well. So thank you to everyone who's helping out behind the scenes today and all days. And welcome to all our fans who are joining us. Just a few more housekeeping notes before we kind of get on into what we all want to talk about, which is, of course, Critical Role. So those of you who are joining us in the chat, we are going to run a giveaway today, as we usually do. To enter the giveaway, you need to enter the keyword once and only once to be entered. Use the hashtag or pound sign, and the keyword today is trinket, Trinket. We all know and love Trinket, of course, the bear from Vox Machina, which we'll see some panels featuring the one and only Trinket today. So to enter the giveaway of a prize pack of Critical Role comics, which will include some of the recent single issues as well as a copy of Volume 1 trade paperback, just enter the keyword hashtag or pound sign Trinket once and only once in the chat, and we will draw the winner near the end of the stream today. I think that's about it. Just remember to be kind and respectful in chat if you can, please. And you are welcome to ask questions of the creators and all of us about the Critical Role comics. We can't really answer questions about the show, but please drop your questions about the comics in the chat, and we will answer some of those as we go along today. So without further ado, let's start talking about comics. I want to mention everything we talk about today. Issue number 6 is the most recent, and the Critical Role Chronicles of Xandria Mighty Nine art book. And we actually also have the trade paperback of Volume 1, which I can show a little bit of that right here. This is the hardcover, but the trade paperback is widely available now. All of these are available at comic shops and bookstores now. Due to COVID and quarantining and social distancing, I know it's been a little bit difficult to operate as normal. So check with your local comic shops and bookstores first if you can, and see what they're offering in terms of online ordering or maybe curbside pickup. Comicshoplocator.com is a really great tool that you can use to find shops near you if you need to find some more options. And indiebound.org is a great tool for finding local bookstores near you. I like to give everybody a chance to shout out some of your local shops if you would like to, those that are open, maybe offering some curbside pickup or things right now. So please feel free to shout out anybody. Maybe we'll start with Ariana.
I've got two. One, if you're in more of the north side of Seattle, I recommend Arcane Comics. They're a bunch of great guys there. I think they still do. They've been doing curbside pickup. I also recommend Phoenix Comics down in Capitol Hill. I'm actually going to go there later today because they've just started phase 1, so they've opened up for limited amount of people to come in and browse comics and stuff, and I have some magic cards to go pick up.
Nice.
But
Yeah, Capitol Hill is actually not a crazy town right now.
yeah, we're
Despite what you
definitely
may have
gonna,
heard.
it's a beautiful day, so we're definitely gonna plan to, walk through there and see how that area's been doing. Because you hear a bunch of stuff in the news, but you talk to people in the area and it seems pretty chill out there.
Mhm.
And yeah, they're going great. So if you get a chance, check out Phoenix Comics.
I can actually second Phoenix Comics as a great store because that was one of the first comic shops I signed at a number of years ago.
Awesome. Yeah, Nick and them are all really great people.
And for those in the LA area, check out my longtime comic shop, House of Secrets in Burbank. They have been similarly like open with limited customers allowed inside at a time, and they've been super supportive of my entire career. They were like buying copies of the anthologies that I was in back when no one knew who the heck I was. So I always try to give them a shout out and wrote them into a comic once even.
Ah.
I couldn't use House of Secrets because that is obviously a licensed name from a different publisher, but I did comment about that great comic shop in Burbank in a comic once. So
Now I'm gonna look for that Easter egg.
My recommendation for Portland is Books with Pictures. I think everybody that lives in the Portland area would say that. They've been doing some delivery around the area, so it's kind of making it easier for people who can't get out to the, directly to the shop. So that is my recommendation. Go check it out.
Yeah, that's a great place.
I think Books with Pictures might have been the last comic shop I signed at because I did a signing there during Rose City Comic Con.
Nice.
Very cool.
And now I'm all nostalgic for actual in-person cons and just hanging out with people.
I'll
But
appreciate it more once we get to do that again.
it's true. It's probably going to be kind of intense, and we're all gonna have a lot of emotions, I feel.
I feel like all the time on Zoom, we're it's going to mess up our depth perception for people's faces. Like, why are you not flat?
It's true. It's been so long since I've actually been around other people besides like those I live with, that I went out for the first time the other day, like about a week and a half ago, besides, just running or walking in my neighborhood. And I forgot, like I went to go say hi when I recognized someone that I knew. And I was like, oh, wait. And we had to do the like elbow bump thing. And I was like, oh, yeah, that is how you're, oh, okay. I'll just wave from a distance. Uh, well, again, at least we can offer these virtual panels and say hi to everybody at home this way. So Jody, of course, is the writer on not only the Critical Role comics, but we have another D&D related tie-in. You also write the Stranger Things comics for us. And there was some news about that today on the stream you were on previously. Do you want to tell us what just got announced?
Yeah, I was just before coming on here, I was on the D&D live stream and announced was a Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons crossover comic that I've been co-writing with Jim Zub. And that's coming out sort of like a joint union between Dark Horse and IDW. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a 4-issue miniseries that launches in November and sort of takes a look at the entire path as D&D players of the kids from Stranger Things and how the game has sort of evolved with them as their lives have changed and, gotten a little bit weirder.
Cool.
If you haven't been reading the Stranger Things comics yet, they are absolutely worth picking up for fans of the show or those who are just looking for a great story. There are a few different miniseries now, and those are being collected, of course, in trade paperbacks of their own. And we also have some young adult novels, graphic novels that are standalone. The most recent one is called Zombie Boys, which was also really cute and written by Greg Pak. So you can find all of those on our website too. But yeah, this is like an ultimate crossover event. Dark Horse, IDW, Wizards of the Coast, Stranger Things, Netflix. So that's pretty exciting.
Of the century.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun working on that with Jim, especially, who was also in the game that Karen and I were in last night. So it's
Jim and I are not rolling so hot in that game.
It's fine. You found some very interesting books.
I sure did. Call of Cthulhu. That's a fun game that I recommend people play. If you're a high roller like me, though, you won't do so well. All right. Well, before we get completely sidetracked by all things RPG, maybe Jody, you can start with telling us kind of the brief synopsis of what Critical Role Vox Machina Origins Series 2 is about, just kind of the full storyline, if you would.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, for people who aren't necessarily familiar with the comic series, Vox Machina Origins takes a look at the adventures of the members of Vox Machina before the stream started of the game. So it's the earlier adventures when they were at lower levels, before it was a show that a bunch of other people were tuning in to watch. So we're telling those stories, and this particular story arc deals a lot with Grog, who is sort of having some issues, not actually his fault this time, and they basically have to go on an epic quest to find some mystical items and save Grog's soul, and they meet two new party members during these adventures, Pike and Percy. So it's a lot of fun sort of seeing the party as we know it come together and fight their first big epic fight against evil. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, as Jody mentioned, so where Series 1 left off, Series 1, of course, was the first 6-issue mini-series. We had a slightly different crew on that one. Matt Mercer, of course, is kind of the overarching storyteller on all of these, but the writer for that one, Matt Colville, Olivia Sampson has been the artist on both series, and Chris Northrup was the colorist on the first series, and that one really showcases how some of the party members first met and the adventures they had. And so in series 2, over the course of the 6 issues of this miniseries, we have finally met the final 2 party members, of course. So Pike first, and then Percy. Spoilers, but not really spoilers. He is the cover boy of issue number 5, which is a gorgeous cover, and I was glad to finally share that. What we're looking at right now is the cover art for volume 2, which will collect the full miniseries of all 6 issues. And that features the art of Grog by William Kirkby. And it's gorgeous. Rachel, can you talk a little bit about how that cover art was chosen actually for volume 2?
It was a process internally with me and Jenny and Critical Role. We really just felt that cover art really encapsulated the entire arc. You have Pike's hand on the one side and Drask's hand on the other side, and just Grog front and center. We just felt that it was just the perfect image to summarize the entire arc. So that's why we chose it. And it's gorgeous.
It is a beautiful, beautiful cover. And then we also just recently announced the library edition, which will collect both of those miniseries together in one. And for those who don't know, I've seen this question come up on social media. Dark Horse library editions are just big, oversized hardcovers that typically collect multiple storylines. So this one will collect, as I said, both series 1 and series 2. So you get the full 12 issues and bonus content, usually a sketchbook and the back matter. And the cover art for that one is the same cover art as issue number 6, which is recently in comic shops. And that art is by Hunter Banyan. Yeah, Jody's got it there. Hey, everybody's got it. I actually don't have it because I'm not in the office right now. Right. Well, and so Jody, as I said, is the writer. Ariana has come on the team as the letterer for this series. And I'm really excited to talk to you about lettering today because it's not something we get to hear about as much usually.
My favorite thing to talk about. You know that.
You are a wealth of knowledge. Having been on panels with you in the past, I know that it's just fascinating to hear about your process too. And so I also want to shout out the other creators on this series too, before we get too far. Michelle, who goes by M Sassy K, is the colorist here, and Olivia returns as the main artist, of course. And then each cover, as you may have noticed, is done by a different amazing critter artist. We also had Fiona Staples on issue number 1, which is pretty amazing.
And Fiona is herself a critter. So
right. Yeah, and all of these folks are also collected in the art book too, which again features lots of cool critter fan art. So we'll get to this in a bit too, but oh man, that's heavy. Like this is the standard edition and even this is heavy. The deluxe edition is like a treasure trove that is full of all kinds of bells and whistles. But comics, to return to the matter at hand. So Jody and Ariana both, could you give us a little bit of background as to how you got involved with the Critical Role comics in the first place?
You can go first, Jody, if you'd like.
Okay. I was already working with Dark Horse on a few different projects, and I sort of happened to be in the Dark Horse offices the exact same time that Matt Mercer and Matt Koval were there talking about what was going to be volume 2. So our sort of meetings ended up converging, and we all had lunch. And I knew Matt from Mercer from back in LA doing live stream stuff. We'd actually done we were both on the same Doctor Who RPG for a while, so that was pretty cool that I got to roll dice with him and later on Talos and Chaffee. So I knew them and just ended up being sort of mixed in with those talks and let them know if there was ever any sort of openings to work on Critical Role comics. I would love to jump in on that. And then when volume 2 was coming up, because of scheduling conflicts, Matt Colville ended up not being able to write it. So they reached out and was like, hey, remember how you said you wanted to write some Critical Role comics? Do you want to write these Critical Role comics? And the rest is history, I guess.
As for me, I knew about Critical Role because my friend Adri ended up joining their team, and I was really interested in the series and everything that was all around it, the big fandom. And I think it was just out of the blue, Rachel's team contacted me, and I think this was my first. Yeah, this is the first project I did with Dark Horse. And I saw the opportunity, and it's like, well, I don't think I could face Adri again if I turned it down, so I got to do it. But then I found out that who the rest of the team was going to be, and I got more and more excited for the idea, because for me, it's really exciting to get to read the scripts from different writers on different books, and they all have different personalities and ways to write scripts. And you can really like an author, but like depending on their script, you may like someone else better, because when I'm lettering directly, I'm copying, pasting text directly from the documents. So the writers I really like are the ones who can like really get the formats down well. So Jody and Greg Pak are two of my big favorites.
Yeah, that's the one of the main things in turn, because every comic writer actually really has their own scripting format. Unlike screenwriting, there isn't sort of a set and these margins and this and this. So one of the things I've tried to do is format my scripts specifically to make it easier for letterers. So
yeah, because everyone uses the scripts in different ways. The artist needs to know what the visual imagery is. The colorist needs to know what time of day it is. For the letterer, we actually need the format to be well. So getting a nice clean format, getting to see how the writer looks at the pages and adapts to it is really great. Because sometimes, I bet you've written like reams of stuff for a panel, and then the artist draws it a different way, and then you have to readjust.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the fun of collaborating, I think, is especially with artists, when you get the pages, it might not be what you expect, like when you were writing the script, but like 99.9% of the time, it's so much better, which is one of the things I love most, is getting the script page or the art pages in the email inbox and taking a look and just be, oh, it came out like even better than I ever could have pictured, but that's why I'm the writer and not the artist.
Especially with Olivia's artwork, she's like so great with expressions, and with your script, the pacing is really good. So it makes it a lot easier for me as a letterer to know all the beats and set the text at the right rhythm, because where we set the text is where people's eyes will go, and that helps set the rhythm of the book. So when I can see all of that going, I can just follow along. It's like, okay, this is, and it's nice and clear, and it gives me more time while I'm lettering to be more creative in other areas, like the sound effects and stuff, instead of trying to fuss with small panels and details when I would rather mess with something bigger.
And Olivia especially is so good at expressions, like you were saying. And sometimes when art comes in, you'll find that maybe a character expression doesn't quite match the line as written. So you adjust the line of dialogue then, so it seems to better fit the emotion that they're showing. And I don't think we've had to do that at all in the whole mini series. I feel like everything she drew was just like spot on for the emotion, and especially considering how emotional a lot of those scenes are. It's just really cool that it worked out that well.
Like that drunken scene in the first issue was just like everyone's hungover and just feeling miserable, and it's just so vivid. I could almost feel hungover with them.
Yeah, I love that scene, and and I love what you did with the lettering in that scene. There's a speech bubble where Vex and Vax, who are super hungover, aren't really paying attention, so the dialogue is just like blah 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 word blah 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 word, and the way you chose to show that stylistically, like, made it like a million times better than it was, just written on a script. When I'm like, oh, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that
So
helps with the guidance that Rachel gives to the work too, is that she'll be like, oh, by the way, there's this scene and such. And so I'll have to stop and think and be like, okay, how would I like to do this to convey the idea that they're not really paying attention to what's being said? And then that ends up becoming a theme that comes out in later issues where it, like in particular, Vex and Vax are talking and Grog's not paying attention. So it just ends up being blah, 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 hunter's mark, blah, 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 blah.
Dagger, dagger, dagger. Yeah. Yeah, it works so well. It's like when something like that just really clicks, it's why not make it a running gag? And that way, like, there's a fun thing that's unique to the comic in the midst of a series that already has so many great sort of inside jokes and nods.
Mm-hmm. Jody, that was actually one of my next questions for you is, and this is something that we are asked about frequently. Your dialogue for the characters is so great and true to the characters themselves. What's your process like coming up with that? And, how do you stay so true to the characters that we all know from the show?
Well, I had watched through the series of Vox Machina previously, and basically, whenever I feel like I might not have as strong a grasp on a specific character's voice, I'll just pop back into the show and listen for a bit. Being that that's sort of one of the useful things, as opposed to some of the other licenses I work on. There's just so much content for Vox Machina, so pretty much any time you need to reference something, or like, how would a character, sort of react in this scene, or sort of what would be their cadence, there's endless examples to go back to and listen to. So I find that like immensely helpful. And of course, they're all such great performers and actors who spent, hundreds of hours just really delving deep into these characters. So, if worse comes to worse, there's definitely some experts that we can ask questions of and, get the right answer from.
Right. And so, Ariana, you both already kind of mentioned some of the panel highlights that stick out for both of you. So, what is your process like working on the lettering for these dialogue options, especially the more creative ones where you get to do the sort of like blah 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 hunter's mark, etc.
Yeah. Well, with different books, you have to come up with a specific style, and usually you take it to like in this case, I take it to Rachel and I'm like, how does this style look for the book? And that's usually just for the captions and for the dialogue, just the baseline stuff. And then from there, I start to decide what kind of sound effects, what kind of look do I want when I'm doing certain things. So for this book in particular, I used certain types of fonts for the sound effects, and then I hand drew other ones to just try to depending on like how raw a sound effect it is. In issue 2, there's a necromancer scene. And in the necromancer scene, I ended up using a font developed by Blambot for like mystical wizard speak. And I think I remember in the script, it just said, insert magical wizard speak here. So I came up with my own, words, and I popped that in through the font. But then it was a matter of like, how do I make something that's a font look like magic? So I managed to use, since Olivia creates this sense of 3D space in her way of drawing comics. Sometimes there's kind of a flat plane kind of feel. Sometimes there's like more, you can feel foreground, background. So I used that to my advantage and just started weaving the magic spells through the scenes around the characters. And that's by using font. While other times when like the dead are being risen back to life, I just drew that by hand and the sound effects. And then I also kind of had some elements in the foreground by cutting out the elements and making it seem like it's all happening there in those spaces. So that's the kind of fun I got to have while working on Critical Role in particular, because some books You know, they'll need sound effects to just be loud and out front, and other books you can just make it a part of the organic space. So that's the kind of fun I got to have. Like with the dialogue, everything I got to go through bam, bam, bam really quickly because it just flows really well. I didn't have to question myself when doing placements on the page and stuff because the dialogue was clicking. There was enough space provided by Olivia in her art to get everything in place. And then I could go back and look at the sound effects and be like, okay, how do I be a little extra here? So that was my fun part when working throughout the book, is like, in this kind of collaboration we got to do for this series, we got to bring a little bit of extra elements that we like to do. So that was really fun.
Well, it looks amazing. We're kind of following along with the digital copy of the comic right now, and you see now, I think those of you who are watching at home, how important the lettering is, and that comes from another part of the team, the letterer, that we don't get to hear about quite as much. You mentioned Blambot. Nate Picos, of course, is another letterer we work with all the time. He's awesome. He's really great. Actually, he's a great one to follow if you're interested in lettering, as is Ariana, of course. Talking about, developing these fonts and tools and all those.
Yeah, it's really interesting to be in a very small section of the industry of letterers, because there's like, 30 or 40 of us. And here we are working next to Nate Pecos in the same industry. And it's like, you're an artist, but you're also working next to the guy that develops the paints. So the paint that you use when you're working.
Mhm.
And I mean, one, especially for anyone who's looking to get into lettering or try your hand, Nate even has some free fonts available just for that purpose. So that are specifically catered toward lettering. And I way back in the day when I was just starting out doing some like silly web comics and stuff, those were the fonts I used. So the fact that like now I'm working with Nate on Stranger Things, and he, I believe, is the letterer for the Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons comic as well. So it's cool to get to work with someone who like is sort of the reason I knew what lettering was even before I started doing this professionally.
Yeah, his website is great if you check out Blambot, because it has advice and tips on just the basic rules that we letterers have. We don't always follow the rules, but it's like just our general how we create our own understanding and language of what we do. And then he also has advice on like proper page size dimensions that letters need for pre-press, and scripts. He has sample scripts for like what we prefer. And he also has tons of fonts and things, both free and ones with a license that's easy to adapt to and use for all of your comics projects. So sorry to turn that into an ad for Nate, but it definitely did help my development as a letterer, for sure.
I even use his better letterer tips as an editor. Like when I'm going through scripts and I'm reading and I'm trying to proofread and format things that might not be formatted correctly, I'm always looking at what his tips are. So that way, like, everything is formatted correctly, and the lettering process will be that much more smoother. So
you put a space after a double dash and things like that.
Yeah, I've learned a lot just by looking at his own social media. So major shout out to Nate. Go find Nate Picos or Blambot. He's on most social media platforms. And I think, maybe our mods can drop a link to his site in the chat too. So Rachel, question for you. We are starting to get some great questions from chat. Thank you everybody for following along, and we'll mix these questions in as we go. We do have a question about, I don't want to get into future projects too much just yet, and we can't really talk about anything that hasn't been announced yet, of course. But I do think it's worthwhile to talk about kind of what we have announced so far. So maybe could you just give like a recap of what is currently available and those things that we've been talking about this week?
Sure. So right now what we have available is, as Kara was saying, the Series 1 trade paperback is out in the world. Please go buy it. The Volume 2 trade paperback is coming out shortly. That collects Series 2, issues 1 through 6. At the very end of issue 6 in that series, we dropped a teaser that says to be continued in Series 3. So it's pretty obvious that we'll be doing more comics here in the future. And then also we have the art book that just came out, which is very awesome. I think Kara's going to show it. Chronicles of Xandria, the Mighty Nine, which features art from across the entire fandom. Thank you to all of the artists who contributed. And then it's written by Danny Carr and Taliesin and Liam. Thank you all for your contributions. The book is gorgeous. Please check it out. There is the standard edition and a deluxe edition through the Critical Role store. So
yes,
very good stuff.
Oh, the deluxe edition is insane.
You could like do your weightlifting with that.
Yeah, I was saying it like this really is, even just this regular standard edition, this is a hefty tome. And this, you can see the shiny spot gloss on the cover art here. It's got Babs Tarr, it's got everybody. Oh, yeah, that's really exciting. Glad that's out in the world now. Critical Role, go check their social out for, yeah, and we've got some preview images from them here too of what the deluxe edition looks like. Huge package with bells and whistles of all kinds, maps, art prints. I forget everything else because there's a lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah, those are all the things that we're kind of excited and talking about this week, as well as the library edition, which will collect everything that I mentioned earlier. And stay tuned. Critical Role also has mentioned, so deluxe editions are typically available through their web store, so check them out to find out more information on those. I don't have a preview of the volume 2, but they have the equivalent of this deluxe hardcover. This is volume 1 that ran through the Critical Role store exclusively, and they're going to do a volume 2 that matches this basically, but it's red instead of green. So you can see that on their website as well.
I remember that being like one of the first questions when Vox Machina Origins 2 was announced, because everyone wants to have the matching books on their bookshelf, and like I can't judge because I feel exactly the same way.
If it was like a different style or they just didn't have it, so it's nice that it's coming out that way. That's going to look really good.
Yeah, I mean, we try to do something for everyone with these. There, and as a result, there are a lot of editions of everything. So I know it can be kind of tough to keep track of. Critical Role put together a really great blog post actually this week, which we both shared online on our social media. That kind of breaks down the whole program so far and the different editions that there are. So yeah, as folks just said, if you are a collector of hardcovers, you have those, the deluxe editions, and then if you like the paperbacks, which same content, just different format, there will be the volume 2 trade paperback coming out, standard edition with that awesome William Kirkby art of Grog on the cover. And then the library edition, as I said, that's kind of a standard format that Dark Horse does. You might be familiar if you like Hellboy. We have those great Hellboy library editions. They're oversized hardcovers that have all the great bonus material. And you know, as Rachel said, we kind of teased a series 3, so you can infer that there will be more of those library editions to come too. You heard it here first. So let us return to the panels and scenes from the comics, if we may. Jody, what would you like to highlight? Are there any panels that particularly stand out in your memory of this current series?
I think especially in issue 5, when we sort of get the reveal of Percy, because I know that was something that so many people were waiting for so long, and you know, finally he's there, and you know, just snarky and sort of wrecked, sitting in a dungeon cell, but like immediately bantering with these strangers who showed up. And that was definitely one of the more fun scenes, I think, to write, was that intro and just that weird interaction at the beginning when they had no idea who this guy was.
Yeah, that was really fun to get to finally reveal too. And his like emo boy really came through, I felt. So good job. The cover art for that one is really beautiful too. Rachel, remind me who the artist was.
Couple of Kooks.
Right. Yes.
Hunter.
Which is a great name. Props on your name, by the way. Let's see what other questions we have from the chat first. For Jody, how is researching for Stranger Things and Critical Role, which are similar in their D&D themes, how is that different for you?
I think the main thing is because Stranger Things is really a period piece. I have to make sure that anything I'm referencing is accurate to the era. Because one of my favorite writers of sort of like younger reader science fiction is a writer named William Slater, who wrote a lot of books in the 70s and 80s. But the ones that sort of most connected with the Stranger Things stuff I was writing all came out like 1 year too late. So I had to be very careful what things I was mentioning, because there's going to be someone who's going to be like, but that was published in 1986. What's it doing there?
Right.
So yeah, I think a lot of the era specific, and even going back to the older editions of D&D, which I've only really played 5th edition primarily. So having to sort of make sure that when I'm mentioning, spells or the roles and everything, the character building, because we did show that in the first issue that we did, that it's also appropriate to that specific edition. And that's actually something that's been really helpful working with Jim on the Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons, because he's been playing Dungeons and Dragons since 1st edition. So he is a wealth of knowledge that I wish I'd had back when I had started on the Stranger Things comics.
Well, I love that it's all finally coming together. Pretty exciting. I've always wanted to be able to kind of combine our different comics that touch on D&D and RPGs, because there is a lot of crossover and there's more all the time. We just had a standalone graphic novel called Raiders come out that's sort of a dungeon crawl based, and the Stranger Things comics, of course, Critical Role being the big obvious one. And we have some other projects coming up. There was a comic called Modern Fantasy with Rafer Roberts and Kristen Goodsnuck, which is one of my personal favorites, sort of like the Office style comedy meets D&D. So yeah, it's fun to bring all these worlds together. A fun question for everybody. When you are playing D&D or other RPGs, do you have a particular type of character that you tend to play the most?
For me, yes. I like to play the nice normal one. We play Monster of the Week sometimes, and my favorite character, he plays one of the Hardy Boys, basically. Like, the running gag is that they're actually the Hardy Boys, but he's actually in Monster of the Week. You get to choose different archetypes. So his archetype is that he's the normal one. So he doesn't have anything special about him, but as a result, he can talk to people in town and not try to blow them up or anything like that. And as he ends up becoming one of the best investigators on the team, just because everyone else is so antagonistic towards the town. The only one who can get the job done is my guy. And then the other D&D, I play a traditional D&D game with a group, and I just play a cleric minotaur, and he's like the nicest dude ever. So sweet, everyone's kind to him, but keeps throwing himself in danger. So I don't know if he's long for this world. But I don't know. That's my method acting. Is like, I'll just be nice and see how much trouble I can get to by being too lawful good.
I mean, the thing, I'm in a lot of RPGs, so I try to always mix up the character types I've played. But I found if you play like they're really, really, really nice, sweet characters, sometimes other characters, like other players, like your character so much they will like take the hit for you. Yeah. I try not to abuse that too much. I'm currently in a D&D campaign that we started last year, and I'm playing a Fire Genasi rogue who kind of seems to think she's more of a bard than a rogue, so I'm probably going to multi-class into bard eventually. But she grew up in a circus. She said she had to give a name, which was probably fake recently, so the name she's going by is Ashforth Circuston Smith. But her real name is Ash, as far as we know. But I just really like Circuston Smith.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's running around with her best friend, and the party is slowly grown. But yeah, they're a good crew. Sort of. They recently got a prophecy that maybe one of them's going to die, and if they try to change it, then the other one's going to die. So that's like a whole thing we got to deal with eventually.
There's always so much trouble happening when you get into a D&D game.
My character's best friend disappeared for 6 months because he's a warlock who got eaten by his own familiar. So it's a whole thing. It happens.
D&D problems.
Hashtag D&D problems. Oh, man.
One of the great things about it, every game is different and you never know what's going to happen.
I like playing my nice guy so much because Matthias, my Minotaur cleric, he will believe what people tell him. So when my boyfriend started playing a rogue who was lying and stealing and things like that, he told me he's a traitor from another land. So I'm just like, oh, what do you trade? And so I'm constantly on his case. So how's that going? Do you trade goods? And he constantly has to like roll bluffs and things like that. So.
I love it. How about you, Rachel?
So I'm not in any active games right now, but I am surprisingly like Ariana in that my characters are always like heart of gold, maybe a little bit naive, super lawful good, but they always tend to be really, really big, beefy ladies. Like the bigger, the better. So yeah, I really gravitate towards like big Amazonian like gladiator woman with a heart of gold.
On the part
like yellow. Yeah.
So basically giant sized cinnamon rolls.
Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
Exactly.
I support this. I also like playing large in charge. Like one of my favorite characters was this cleric who was amazing. So are you looking forward then to maybe eventually someday working on some Yasha material? I don't like asking people like favorite characters because I feel like that gets into dangerous territory, but yeah, I think in this case that's a pretty obvious connection, right?
Just putting that idea out there into the ether.
I mean, in this case, we have a lot of grog, and he's definitely the biggest and baddest in Vox Machina.
And he's honestly one of the most fun to write too, because he'll just the stuff that he will say is not anything anyone else would say or think of necessarily. So
I think one of my favorite grog moments was in this series when they were looking for the nymph heart. And the whole rest of the Critical Role cast was excited because they thought they were going to learn what had happened, what Grog found, and that it would be revealed in the comic. However, what they found out was that it's still kind of Grog's private moment. None of us really know.
He is capable of being a gentleman when required. Maybe-ish.
I forget which issue that was. Was that issue 2?
That was issue 4.
4. Let's see if we have any other questions from the chat. We are actually already kind of starting to run out of time. I don't want to keep everybody for too long. This has been a really fun chat, and it's exciting to hear about the process of the writers and the letterers, because we don't get to hear from you as often, and the editor as well, because aside from these Dark Horse streams, yeah, you guys are usually, we're in the background, those of us who are kind of on the admin side, but Rachel does an immense amount of work on this whole Critical Role publishing program, which like includes not only
seriously you have to juggle through.
There's a lot going on.
I think I've heard editing described as like a bathtub full of ping pong balls that you're trying to all push underwater at the same time.
That's a pretty apt description. I approve that.
Yeah. Yeah, with me being at the tail end of the production process, like lettering and coloring are usually the last steps to get through, and the letterer is usually the one that helps like make sure that the book's all put together at the end or helps in some form. And being at that step of the process isn't always the easy part. Sometimes you got to rush, sometimes you're right at the end of the line, but when things come together, it's always a bit magical.
Well, we just drew a winner in our giveaway, so congratulations. They have been announced in the chat. I hopefully will pronounce this close to correctly, Guia Mia. So congratulations. Send us a whisper or a private message here on Twitch if you can, and we will get in touch with you about getting that prize out to you. Congrats. Thank you everybody for following along with us today. This is kind of the last call. If you have any other questions for the team here. One more fun question that I've been asking folks on our other panel streams lately. If the members of Vox Machina were quarantining, as we have been for a while, staying home, social distancing, how do you think they would be passing the time? And this is for
ale.
Right.
That would go so, it would just go so badly. I mean, it also depends where they're quarantined. Like, is this later on when they actually have Grayskull to go back to, or is this like, and they're just stuck in an inn somewhere and destroying things slowly all around them?
Yeah, I think see things get more chaotic if they're stuck in a tavern together.
I feel like everyone would just like, and there would just end up, even those who may not seem like they like Trinket as much, there would just end up being a lot of like cuddle time with Trinket, because it's a big comforting bear. And, you know, when the world's sad, you want to hug a big giant bear.
I would do that.
Yeah.
100%.
That would be the best.
I guess Keyleth could like wild shape into things if she wanted to.
Yeah, there could be like double giant animal hug time.
Fluffiest animals they can think of. Like
I only recently started playing a druid in one campaign, and so now I get to wild shape, and it's been entertaining to say the least.
It's great. Our druid mostly just summons things. We ended our last session walking into a train car of vampires, so she just summoned like 16 panthers. Like you do.
That's amazing. I don't think I can do that yet. Like not nearly up to that level.
Yeah, I think we're level 11 now, so we're getting up there.
Nice.
Yeah, much more advanced than I am. Well, I think, looks like our giveaway has been claimed, and that'll kind of wrap up our questions. As I said, we can't really talk too much about things we haven't announced yet, but we are super excited to continue to work with Critical Role. They are amazing partners to work with, and we're really excited for all of the cool things that we have going on right now, as well as those things that are coming up. The Volume 2 books are up for pre-order now. Those are available widely. The trade paperback you can pre-order. Go to darkhorse.com. You'll find links for Barnes & Noble and Comic Shop Locator and indiebound.org to find local shops near you. And of course, the other big online retailers like Amazon. And other international sources, and Critical Role has some options in their shop too. So check out critroll.com to see what they are offering, especially those deluxe editions, like the deluxe edition art book, which is like insane. It's so cool. If you're a collector of nice deluxe editions of things, which I'm totally a sucker for, go check it out. See all the cool stuff that comes in it. The hardcovers also are available through critroll.com. So check those out if you want the hardcover volume 2. Single issues, issue number 6 just came out recently. So check with your comic shop to see if they still have those in stock. A lot of things did get disrupted, of course, by COVID. And so we had to reschedule dates, but we were able to release that one in comic shops widely, actually initially a couple weeks ago. But again, with everybody's different schedules, different shops may have put it out a little bit later. So check in, see if you can still get it from them. And they're available digitally as well at digital.darkhorse.com, and of course on Comixology and all those sites too. So lots of options to get your Critical Role comics fix. And I think that will wrap us up for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It's been kind of a crazy month, but I hope you're all staying well. And
better now that I got to socialize. So
yeah.
Right. We do what we can, these virtual panels. So thank you again for joining us, and there will be some more Critical Role content coming later today on Twitch, so tune back in for their All Work No Play episode. And I think that with that, we will sign off for the day.
Is it Thursday yet? I don't know. Time means nothing now. So
I have lost all track of time like weeks ago. I don't even know how long we've been in quarantine. But yes, thank you again for joining us today, everybody, and stay tuned. We will be back on Twitch every Wednesday for new comic book day and then extra sessions like today. So check our weekly schedule out on Mondays. And thank you again. Have a good rest of your day, whatever time it is for you.